Christina wasn't hiding her frustration. "You're acting like an old man again," she snapped at Val. Val shot back. "Oh yeah? Is that what it looks like when I act like a teenager?" The age gap between them was becoming more obvious, with Christina just over 30 and Val 10 years her senior. They'd been married for 5 years now, but lately, Christina had started to complain about how boring life had become. They no longer went to exciting places or had fun together. Christina loved hitting nightclubs and concert halls, but Val wasn't into that scene. It was clear the age difference was starting to create a rift between them. Christina had stopped working a few years ago, living off Val's income and the rent from her apartment. At first, she used the rental money for herself, treating herself to new things and sometimes asking Val for extra funds. When the last tenants were preparing to leave, Val, as always, stepped in to help. But soon after, Christina started disappearing for the entire day. She'd tell him she was meeting friends or going to a cafe, and then come home much later than him. Val began to grow suspicious. When he asked where she had been, she insisted she just needed some social time with her friend Helen. One day, Valerie's concerns deepened. He had to visit a notary in the same area where Christina's rental apartment was, and after finishing up his business, something made him feel like he should swing by. He casually glanced up at Christina's apartment, noticing the light was on. Strange, since the apartment was supposed to be vacant. His curiosity got the best of him, and he went up to the floor and called her. "I'm just cleaning the apartment," she answered. "Great, I'll be right there," Valerie replied, and without missing a beat, he knocked on the door. When Christina opened it, Val was stunned to find a young man sitting at the table, reading a book. What really raised his suspicions, though, were the sneakers by the door. It was too much. He thought he'd caught her in the act. The young man quickly jumped in to clear the air. "This is my brother Max," he said. "He got kicked out of the dorm, so I'm letting him crash here while he figures things out. That's why I'm not renting the apartment out right now." Max extended his hand to Valerie. Valerie hesitated, trying to process what was going on. Since he had other things to do, he decided he'd save the questions for later. He talked to Christina about this whole situation that evening over dinner. Later that night, Valerie brought up the incident, mentioning Max in a casual way. Christina's response was almost immediate. "My husband got suspicious when I mentioned my brother," she said, trying to smooth things over. "We're actually half-siblings. My dad had other kids besides me. You know how it is. He and mom got divorced." Valerie didn't quite buy it, though he kept his thoughts to himself. It seemed strange that Christina had never mentioned any brothers before, and the idea of giving away an entire apartment was odd. He remembered the conversation he'd had with her dad at their wedding, when they'd exchanged numbers. This could be the perfect chance to get some answers. So he called Christina's father, Nick Sergeyevich, and casually asked how he was doing. Then, as if it was nothing, he mentioned his son, just to see if the story checked out. Nick Sergeyevich's response threw them off. "Christina is my only child. I'm not sure where you heard that," he said, sounding genuinely confused. That was it. Valerie was sure now. Christina had lied. The next day, he left work early, planning to catch her while she was out. As luck would have it, the lights in her apartment were on. Valerie decided to confront the situation head-on. He greeted Max, pretending to have already spoken with Christina about him. "Max, Chrissy mentioned you're studying to become a doctor," Val said, hoping to keep the conversation going. Max gave a weak nod, clearly uncomfortable. "She's a confident young woman, so I doubt she'd ask you for help. But if you know someone who can assist, maybe you could lend a hand. She's been waiting for a cure for a pretty unpleasant venereal disease for a couple of months now. If you've got any contacts who might be able to help, it couldn't hurt to ask." The man explained. Max's face drained of color, and his eyes widened. "Relax, you won't catch anything from the plates." Val laughed, patting the young man on the shoulder. "But seriously, you need to start taking responsibility, something you've clearly been avoiding." The young man ignored Val's comments and slowly got up from the table. Without saying a word, he grabbed his backpack from the sofa and started packing his things in haste. "I've gotta go, sorry," he mumbled, grabbing his belongings and quickly leaving the apartment. Val sat there laughing aloud. Man, the receptionist at the clinic is going to be shocked when this kid bursts through the door, demanding an urgent test for his wife. Val chuckled. He decided not to drag the situation out any longer. He gathered Christina's things into bags and placed them in the hallway. When Christina returned from her friend's house and walked through the door, she was momentarily confused. "Val, are you doing some deep cleaning or something?" she asked, still not noticing the bags. "It's more of a pre-cleaning," he replied. "I cleared out your apartment. Now you can share it with 10 broke college students. Although, after everything that's happened, I don't think any of them will be eager to get to know you. If I were you, I'd steer clear of any more wild parties." Christina stood frozen, shocked and speechless. She struggled to process her husband's words. It all clicked when he casually mentioned having called her father to discuss her brother. Her secret affair with her younger lover had been uncovered. With nowhere else to turn, Christina had no choice but to move into her modest apartment. But without her husband's financial support, she quickly realized she couldn't keep up with the rent. Desperate, she started looking for work, but her long time away from the job market made it harder to find something. So, she resorted to finding another benefactor. Unfortunately, this too led to disappointment, as Valerie's friends had already caught wind of the true reason behind their separation. No wealthy man was willing to get involved with her. After 15 years in a relationship, your perspective starts to shift. Life changes you, and you begin to see your spouse, not just as your partner, but as someone who can also drive you mad. That's what happened to Gregory, who had been working as a trucker for the past few years. He loved hitting the road and then coming back home to his wife. Their arrangement worked well. They both enjoyed the time apart, and when they came back together, it felt like a mini honeymoon each time. Gregory's wife, Xenia, ran a small but successful beauty salon. While it wasn't huge, it brought in good money. Their daughter, Varia, was 18 and chasing her dream of becoming a designer in another city. Both Gregory and Xenia were proud of their daughter's ambition and often praised her for inheriting that same drive from her mother. But lately, Xenia had grown frustrated with Gregory's presence. Everything about him seemed to get on her nerves, from the way he watched TV to the way he sipped his tea, even the sound of his breathing at night. She found herself counting down the days until his time off ended, eager for the quiet she'd have when he was gone. "I leave for my trip in 2 days, but I can't find my warm suit," Gregory mentioned one day, asking for Xenia's help. With a smile, she assured him, "Kathy, I either have it here or I packed it away. I'll find it for you tomorrow, don't worry." 2 days passed quickly, and Xenia didn't feel any regret. She spent her time enjoying the 3 full weeks of freedom, reveling in the solitude more with each passing day. But as the halfway point of Gregory's absence approached, Xenia started to feel a little sadness creeping in. She could sense his return was nearing. One day, Xenia decided to take a leisurely walk to unwind, but the weather wasn't cooperating. The wind was biting, and the chill in the air made her feel as though she might freeze. Desperate to find warmth, she quickly searched for a cozy place. Her eyes landed on a cafe across the street. Hesitant to jaywalk, she waited for the signal before crossing and made her way inside. The warm ambiance of the cafe immediately put her at ease, and she sat down at a table. Before long, a waiter approached her, offering a friendly greeting and handing her a menu. To her surprise, she recognized him as Cyril, her friend's son. "Hello," she smiled. Cyril paused, a bit taken aback, as he tried to place her face. After a moment, his expression softened, and he smiled back. They exchanged greetings, and Xenia couldn't help but notice how much he had changed since she had last seen him. Tall, handsome, and with charming dimples on his cheeks that she found herself admiring. As they chatted briefly, Xenia placed her order, but her mind kept drifting back to Cyril. She couldn't shake the image of him, especially as he continued to check in on her throughout her time in the cafe. That night, he appeared in her dreams, and the next day, she found herself thinking about him again. She scolded herself for getting distracted, trying to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept wandering back to imagining different scenarios with Cyril. Soon, Gregory noticed Xenia obsessively scrolling through Cyril's social media page, going through his photos with an almost obsessive attention to detail, zooming in, studying each one closely. "What are you doing?" Gregory asked, surprised by what he saw. Startled, Xenia quickly tried to cover her phone, but Gregory's curiosity was piqued. He pressed her to show him what she had been looking at. Reluctantly, Xenia resisted, and a tense argument broke out. From then on, she tried to be more cautious, but Gregory's suspicions only grew. He had a sense that something was being hidden from him, and he began pushing her to reveal the truth. The constant pressure led to frequent quarrels, and during their last trip, Gregory left without saying a proper goodbye. Coincidentally, right after Gregory's departure, Cyril reached out to Xenia. He confessed that he had been thinking about her since their last meeting and expressed his desire to see her again. Without much hesitation, Xenia agreed, thinking this might be a way to address the growing issues in her marriage. They met, and before long, they were passionately kissing in the back seat of a cab on their way to her home. Knowing that Gregory would still be away for 3 more weeks, Xenia shamelessly allowed Cyril to move in with her during that time. Sometimes she would reflect on the situation, a 40-year-old woman cheating on her husband with a 20-year-old man. The thought only fueled her desires further, pushing her deeper into the affair. However, their secret would be exposed in the most unexpected way. Gregory, fortunate enough to return from his trip earlier than planned, decided to surprise Xenia with an early return. Remembering their intense argument before he left, which had left 2 weeks of silence between them, he wanted to make an unexpected return home. Upon arriving, Gregory made a quick stop at a flower shop and bought a large bouquet for Xenia. The scent of fresh spring flowers filled the air as he walked down the street, holding the fragrant bouquet in his hands. Thoughts of their reunion filled him with excitement, his heart racing with anticipation. Little did he know, this day was about to take a devastating turn. As he approached the house, Gregory noticed the soft, inviting glow of dim lights coming from the kitchen and bedroom, creating a cozy atmosphere. It gave him a sense of peace and happiness, a warmth that he longed for after 2 weeks apart. Standing by the front door, he could faintly hear the sound of romantic music drifting from inside. The door, thin and aged, had never been replaced since they'd moved in, and it puzzled him to hear music playing. With a slight push, the door creaked open, revealing a portable speaker on the kitchen table, the melodic tune filling the room. Carefully closing the door behind him, Gregory walked cautiously toward the bedroom. To his surprise, the door was unlocked and slightly ajar. What he saw upon entering left him utterly speechless and broken-hearted. There before him, his beloved wife, whom he had longed to see after their separation, was on her knees in front of another man. The man, Cyril, held her by the hair while her hands were bound behind her back with handcuffs. Cyril was the first to notice Gregory standing in the hallway. Frozen in place, he realized the gravity of the situation. Xenia turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting Gregory's, and the devastation on her face was unmistakable. In a fit of rage, Gregory lunged at Cyril, grabbing the handcuffs and using them as a weapon. Helpless, Xenia cried out, begging him to stop, but there was nothing she could do to protect her lover. Her screams echoed in the room, her tears mixing with her cries. Eventually, Gregory's fury subsided, and he stood panting, his chest heaving as he took heavy breaths. His hands remained clenched in fists, and his eyes, filled with a mix of hatred and disbelief, never left Xenia's face. She stumbled back from the wall, her voice trembling as she tried to explain herself, but Gregory refused to listen. In one swift, violent motion, he closed the distance between them and struck the wall beside her face, the sound of the impact echoing in the room. Fear washed over Xenia, and in that moment, she mentally braced herself for what she feared might be the end of her life. But despite his rage, Gregory couldn't completely lose control. "He doesn't deserve worse," he snarled through clenched teeth. "Leave." Ignoring their protests, Gregory forcefully pushed them out the door, his anger so raw that he couldn't care about the consequences for Xenia. He shoved her belongings out the window, indifferent to their future. The next day, he went to the registry office to file for divorce and then drowned his sorrows in a bar until he couldn't remember a thing. He woke up the following morning on a park bench, the cool night air brushing against his drunken body. Despite the approaching summer heat, he ran into Xenia a few times at the registry office during the division of their property. She apologized and cried, but never once did she beg to save their family. It seemed as though Xenia had come to terms with the fact that their marriage was beyond repair, that the betrayal was something she couldn't undo. When his daughter told him that Xenia had moved in with Cyril, despite her objections, Gregory couldn't help but feel a bitter knot tighten in his chest. Though he told his daughter he wished them happiness, a deep resentment simmered inside him. He knew that their age difference would eventually cause trouble. Time would show Xenia the loss of her old life, the friendships, the family, and the respect she once had among their acquaintances.